In the Rwanda massacre of 1994, the main antagonists, the Hutus, claimed that their neighbors, the Tutsis, who were the victims of the massacre, were foreigners and so not indigenous to the land. The question is, foreigners from where? I don't know. Nevertheless, the Hutus knew enough not to accept the Tutsis as their kinsmen, let alone allow them to rule them. This claim made by the Hutus was made 200 years earlier in West Africa during the time of the transatlantic slave trade. The Islamic African monarch Mohammed Bello, second Sultan of the Sokoto Empire, made the same claim to justify the war and ethnic cleansing he was carrying out against his neighbors, the old Oyo Negro Empire, which bothered his kingdom. A visit was made to the Sultan, Bello, by Europeans, desperate to find the source of so many enslaved people coming down to the coast. The reason Bello gives, Mohammed Bello, who was the second Sultan of the Sokoto Empire, the reason he gives is that his enemies were not Africans at all, even though they were black. The following is what he said. The inhabitants of this province, Yaba, it is supposed, originated from the remnant of the children of Canaan, who were of the tribe of Nimrod. The cause of their establishment in the west of Africa was as it is stated, in consequence of their being driven by Yaroba, son of Canaan, out of Arabia, to the western coast between Egypt and Abyssinia. From that spot, they advanced into the interior of Africa till they reached Yaba, where they fixed their residence. On their way, they left in every place they stopped at a tribe of their own people. Thus, it is supposed, all the tribes of Sudan, who inhabit the mountains, are originated from them, as also are the inhabitants of Yaori. Mohammed Bello claims that the victims, the old Oyo Negro Empire, even though they are dark-skinned like other people in Africa, were actually foreigners and not indigenous to the land. The Yoruba people who live in Nigeria, the Gadangbe people who live in Ghana, and the Ewe people who live in Ghana, Togo, and Benin, all share the same point of origin in the old Oyo Empire that Mohammed Bello was enslaving and beyond. This means that they are indeed the same people and related to each other. But because we lack history, many do not know this basic truth. The Gadangbe history teaches that before arriving in their present home, their ancestors lived in Ile-Ife, present-day Western Nigeria. Ile-Ife used to be the spiritual home of the Ewe Empire of Old Oyo, and the present occupiers of Old Oyo are the Yorubas. Before the name was changed to Yoruba, the people in the surrounding area identified by their tribe names. Collectively, these were known as Evevio, Hebrew people, under the governance of Old Oyo. This means the Gadangbe, the Ewes, and the Yorubas are actually one people. Unfortunately, migrating to separate locations in Africa over many years caused these groups to forget they are one and the same people, thus leading to the situation where Yoruba does not identify themselves as Evevio and the Gadangbes do the same. Yet in truth, all these three groups are one. All these three groups of people are one. They are all Evevio's Hebrew people. That which separates them are the dialects, but in terms of their ancient origins, they are all one and the same people. Mohammed Bello's claim that his victims, the Yoruba people who live in Nigeria, the Gadangbe who live in Ghana, and the Ewe people who live in Ghana, Togo, and Benin, who all share the same point of origin, the old Oyo Empire and beyond, were not African at all, even though they were black, begs the question, where do these people come from then? What is their origins? We read where Mohammed Bello mentioned that he was carrying out an ethnic cleansing policy of people whom he claimed were not Africans. The people he was referring to, according to him, were spread across the Sudan. This territory is currently known as the interior region of West, Central, and East Africa. Fortunately for us, Bello mentioned the people spread across the Sudan region by name. So we are able then to connect the dots to show the people in the Sudan that the Islamists captured and sold into slavery. Let's refresh our memory of part of Mohammed Bello's statement. The inhabitants of this province, Yaba, it is supposed, originated from the remnant of the children of Canaan. Bello says these people spread across the Sudan in the interior of West Africa that he was enslaving were known as the Yaba. Yaba, however, was not only the name of the people. Yo or Oyo was another name of the Yaba people. They had other names as Iyo and Yariba, which were the most common. On page 27 of the Memorials of Missionary Labors in Africa and the West Indies, we find this stated. The next people that claim our attention are the Yaribans. This numerous and powerful tribe of native Africans inhabit an extensive plain, the western border of which is within 100 miles of the coast, and extends eastward nearly to the river Niger. The land is described as remarkably fertile and well cultivated, producing Indian corn, millet, yams, rice, cotton, and indigo. The capital of Yariba is Iyo. Down in the south, on the Atlantic coast, the people of Dahomey, who were kinsmen to the Yariba or the Yaba people, knew them by their true and proper name, the Evevio or Eveo. This name they passed on to the Europeans trading with them. However, the Europeans struggled with the name pronunciation and ended up with Iyo. Sir Francis Burton, commenting on the struggle they had with the name, wrote the following. The word Iyo has greatly vexed West African writers before the days of Clapperton and Lander. Danville uses Gogo. Renell, Gugo. Adams write it Hio. The history of Dahomey gives us Yahoo. From Snellgrave, Oyo. The name is actually pronounced Eveo or Evevio. In the singular, it is Eve. The Eveo occupy 4 countries in West Africa, namely Ghana, Togo, Republic of Benin, which was Dahomey, and Western Nigeria. Going by modern maps of West Africa, the 4 countries occupy exactly the area formerly known as the Slave Coast. West Africa is predominantly Eve, meaning Hebrew. Now that we know the true identity of enslaved Africans and their relatives in a large chunk, the next thing is to examine the remainder of Bello's statement, as this explains why the people were under attack from the Islamists, whose ethnic cleansing resulted in millions sold into slavery. Who are the Ewe people? And why was so many of their people sold into slavery? Is there any truth in the claim by Bello and the Fulani oral history of the identity of those enslaved? By examining his words fully, hopefully we'll arrive at the truth. Bello claimed the people he was enslaving were not indigenous Africans, that they originated from the land of Canaan in the Middle East. Bello is implying these people he is enslaving are the ancient Israelites. The people in the area formerly known as the Slave Coast in West Africa are the Ewes, aka the Hebrews. They migrated over 3,000 years ago when the Babylonians destroyed their kingdom along with ancient Egypt. During the time of the transatlantic slave trade, due to the ravages of war, millions of ever prisoners of war were transported as slaves to North and South America. Thus, their descendants in these countries are also Ewe, aka Hebrews. These include the freed slaves relocated in Sierra Leone and Liberia. They are all Ewe. So, where did Bello get this information from? Indisputably, Bello's statement was from information inherited and passed down by his Fulani ancestors. It is also interesting to note the amount of detail included in what Bello said. The Ewe people themselves did not have such detailed information about their origins. Therefore, it is intriguing how the Hausa Fulani came by the information. Also bear in mind, Bello was a Muslim, and at that time in history, the Bible in the form of Christian missionaries had not reached this part of Africa. Therefore, one cannot dismiss Bello's statements as snippets of information he picked up from Christian missionaries. Thus, given the fact Bello's statements did not come from the Bible, how he came across such information is intriguing. As I mentioned earlier, indisputably, Bello's source for his knowledge would be the oral traditions of his Fulani Arab ancestors, handed down over the generations. For those who may not know this, the land of Canaan is another name for the home of the Israelites. It is an ancient term used synonymously with the Promised Land. Therefore, it is not a common phrase to easily stumble upon. For Bello to use the phrase, children of Canaan, is a big surprise, as it means the source of Bello's information is very ancient. Given the source knew so much to refer to the home of the Israelites by its ancient name. This would place those ancestors close to the people who lived in the land of Canaan. Bello's statement. The inhabitants of this province, Yaba, it is supposed, originated from the remnants of the children of Canaan, who were of the tribe of Nimrod. Bello mentions an interesting name, Nimrod. As fate would have it, shortly after Bello mentions this name, history and archaeology was about to come together and unravel the mystery surrounding this name Nimrod, and thus prove beyond doubt Bello's source of information was very accurate and unimpeachable. The book containing Bello's statement was published in 1826. At this time in history, no independent proof of the Assyrians existed outside the Bible. Furthermore, because Bello was a Muslim and during his lifetime, European missionaries had not reached that part of Africa, it is quite safe to say Bello's mention of the Assyrian capital Nimrod did not come from the Bible. Nevertheless, he spoke of the Assyrian capital when his European audience had never heard of it independently mentioned anywhere apart from the Bible. The Bible mentions Assyria as the land of Nimrod in the book of Micah chapter 5. However, apart from the account in Micah 5, no one outside the Bible ever associated Assyria with Nimrod. As a result, some modern scholars disputed the Bible's testimony. That is until 1849 to 1851, when archaeologist Austin Henry Layard discovered in northern Iraq the ancient remains of 3 Assyrian cities, including Nineveh. This discovery silenced the skeptics, given the fact in 1826 an African monarch spoke of Nimrod in Assyria long before Austin Layard's archaeological discovery. Clearly, Mohammed Bello's source of information was beyond doubt, quite unimpeachable. What was the statement? The inhabitants of this province, Yaba, which were actually the Evers, aka the Hebrews, originated from Israel, the land of Canaan, to their current location. Of course, we are the ancient Hebrews. Tra, omanye ablawo.